Hi, thanks so much for joining the ClearTech Loop podcast. I'm Joe Peterson. I'm the Vice President of Cloud and Security for Clarify 360 and the Chief Analyst at ClearTech Research. And I'm here today with Tim Youngblood, CISO in Residence at Asterisk Security. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining and making time to visit.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Tim is a cybersecurity veteran, y'all. He has a long history. He's an angel investor in the space, and he is on the advisory or board or has advisory or board roles with 13 different organizations. So you wonder where he finds time in his day to do something like this. I'm just grateful he's here. He's also held senior security roles at organizations like T-Mobile, McDonald's, Dell. So he's true cybersecurity veteran.
I have been around the block for a while, and I think once I got inducted into the CISO Hall of Fame, and I said, I guess that means it's time to end this game. Right? There's nothing else I need to be doing here.
that was the high water mark, huh?
Yeah.
I know you and I were just chatting before we started recording. We met on the Cloud Security Alliance's AI Security Council. So you give your time to volunteer organizations as well to help better, things for customers and practitioners in the environment. So it's nice of you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of the things I think, I've been in this industry 30 years, and I love the opportunity to give back when I can. I also mentor a few current operational CISOs, and just try to make sure people can learn from all the mistakes I've made, and I have made many in my life.
Well, haven't we all? I mean, you approach technology as with the idea that you're going to have to get some scars and you're going to have to learn sort of through the fire sometimes, right?
Yep.
I think so. In case you guys haven't had a chance to visit with us on the podcast before, we're a hot take approach to podcasting, and we're just focused on cybersecurity, cloud security, and AI security. And Lord knows there's enough there in those spaces. Each weekly episode, we ask our guests 3 focused questions, and we want to quickly educate our listeners about the security landscape, both risk and opportunities, in real time, because we want an of-the-moment approach to what's going on. So with that said, I'm going to ask Tim 3 questions in short order here, and we're going to find out what his thinking is on some of these topics. Let me dig in with the first one. Tim, how can cybersecurity professionals leverage generative AI to break out of that traditional tool and tech mindset and drive more innovative thinking and execution in their security programs?
Yeah, I look at this as old wine and new bottles, so to speak. And, I think the traditional tools that are current in the cybersecurity stack for most organizations, are still needed. You still need firewalls. You still need EDR. You still need SIEMs. Those things are not going away, at least at this point. And, I think AI is using those tools and making them better and making the people that use them better. And I think that's the power of it, because AI is giving people the ability to get answers at a much faster rate than they would have before. And it's really interesting to me to see how this evolution has really taken shape. We've gone from this era of sort of static, sort of generative AI, where it was, about prompts and, pointing AI to specific data sets to learn from, and then trying to get insights through asking, the right types of questions to try to get answers, to going to this era of co-pilots, right? Where, it's more of a collaborative tool where, there are certain actions and processes you may program the co-pilot to go and analyze, in security, log data, or, start an incident investigation, provide some enhanced reporting, certain actions take place. It's, combining sort of the first gen AI with some of the automation kind of technology you've had in the past. Like, we all had or used RPA at some degree, and this is combining those two with the purpose again of making humans more efficient and effective at what they do. And I've been really amazed at how we're now entering this era of AI agents. I
Hmm.
was at RSA this year, and I literally could not turn my head without hearing the word AI agent everywhere I went. And it is, really the hottest buzzword. And it's amazing to me because I started doing, a little bit more research around that evolution, the last half of last year. And at that point, I really didn't think that, we'd see, super useful, use cases. I mean, there were companies, that are, very innovative, like in financial services, that already had some form of this going on. But I didn't think we'd see any kind of widespread use cases until 2026, and it's happening right now, and it's just incredible the
Hmm.
pace of where you've gone from the co-pilot era to where AI agents, and in that era, AI agents are taking actual actions without human instruction. And it's a fascinating thing. It's a little bit of a scary thing in some cases. In the cybersecurity space, there are a lot of use cases where you're seeing people create agents to take over all the responsibility for a level one SOC analyst. And
Exactly.
in fact, I won't name the company, but there's a startup that I've talked to a few times that that is a service they provide. Right, like, we'll be basically a digital worker on your cybersecurity team, and we will handle all level one incidents. If there's a level one incident, this is your new team member, right? And they will go off, and they will sit there, they will analyze the logs just like a regular analyst would, and they see an anomaly, they will identify pattern of that anomaly, then they will raise a ticket so that it will go up to a level two analyst to go and assess. And that's happening right now.
Hmm.
So I think it's up to cybersecurity teams to assess how well is that going to work within their organizations, right? And it's there's some debate on whether is it really replacing or is it continuing to enhance, right? We went out of Copilot, now an AI agent. Do you still need people to be there? And my immediate answer is yes. Right now, I don't think that the AI agent is mature enough or consistent enough to be trusted to do it all without any oversight at all. Confirm the consistency that you're getting, and to continuously sort of train up that digital worker, right? Because that digital worker right now has the experience of a slightly experienced intern, right? And you wouldn't let a slightly experienced intern go off on their own and start doing things without some oversight. And that's the same case with AI.
That's a great analogy. And that drops me right into the next question. So thank you for taking me there. There's this balance. How is my organization going to embed security and privacy controls into AI model development without sort of slowing down innovation? And it can be more than AI model development. It can be AI use by the employee pool, right? So it can be anything, right? So how do we do that? How do we allow employees to innovate, but also keep it secure?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? Because I think it's important to allow some freedom of experimentation, right?
Hmm.
But to also have guardrails, right? To understand when things may not be happening as you expect them to happen. And I'll give you a great example. When I was a CISO at McDonald's, McDonald's is very progressive. In fact, they have progressed all the way to the stage where they've already deployed AI agents down to the restaurant level,
Wow.
to help, with customer transactions. It's
Wow.
incredible. But when I was a CISO there, they were still somewhat young on their digital transformation, but they had acquired a company to help them with suggestive sell. And it was incredible to see how they could analyze the data of people selecting menu items and
Mhm.
then take that data and say, hey, you liked, this menu food item. I think it'd be great if you add Sunday to that, or you add this, and with a high likelihood that yeah, that does make sense because that person like because of their eating habits, it would make sense for them to do that. The
Wow.
the challenge became really, and it was something that I brought up as a CISO, like, okay, if we really thought through the ethical guardrails of that, right? So you're
Mm,
capturing, you know, people's eating habits, and then you're regurgitating back to them what they should have next. And not especially not every ethnic type eats the same type of food. So if
right.
you're providing the same type of offer, for one customer, and another customer would, well, I'd love to have that, but it never gives me that offer, right? I never get any, it seems a little bit off,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you got to have some guardrails for that. So that's just an example of what, why it's important to kind of think through the fact that when you are thinking about your AI program, think about it holistically. Think about the ethical guardrails. Think about the compliance issues that may evolve out of that. It's very similar because we had a challenge, you know, um, uh, 2 decades ago trying to get PCI off the ground, and
Mhm.
had this issue of connected systems, and people struggled with that quite a bit, right? Because anything that was connected to cardholder data was part of the cardholder environment. It had to have all the same type of
Mhm.
controls to it. Well, you know institute something like AI agents. That's basically what you're doing. You're allowing, some piece of code to go in there and say, okay, I'm going to connect in and get, this transaction. Well, that transaction is part of the cardholder data. Well, guess what? Now that AI agent is also part of the cardholder data. And then anything it connects to is also part of the cardholder data.
Right.
So, you've got to give some thought about, okay, what is the new sort of compliance footprint for me in allowing this type of activity to happen, and then what kind of controls do I need to be put in place to make sure things don't happen that put us out of compliance, right? Or create some security um, issue that we hadn't really thought through completely. Which I've seen this happen. With some early deployments of AI. I recall, when some on Wall Street were deploying, sort of AI models and sort of early versions of AI agents, and they had it making super transactions, of stock trades, right? And they were analyzing that, and as they were doing that, they were creating red flags that the SEC was saying, like, you're making too many trades too quick, right? That this looks like
Oh,
fraudulent behavior, and
right.
it created all these red flags. And it's like, okay, that's not what we meant to happen with this, and we didn't think through, what that outcome could have been. So,
It's interesting.
we absolutely have to create a platform for people to experiment and understand, but also, put in those guardrails of like, thou shalt not ever have this happen. And let's make sure we have a
Right.
way of making sure.
Right. And that's why I'm encouraged by the evolution of MCP,
Yeah.
and I really think that that might be a gatekeeper, um, especially with the, um, with the 2.0 version where it's tokenized, right? So kind of it kind of puts these things in place that you were talking about. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves. Last question. How should the CISO be thinking about AI adoption in terms of its use to secure emerging threats? And then also the other side of that coin from an organizational governance perspective.
Yeah. That's one of the toughest things to keep up with. In fact, I was just on a call with CISO when we were talking about, this particular breach that had occurred, 2 months ago. And he immediately said, "Whoa, I didn't hear about that." And he said, "Yeah, there was a CISA release on this." He says, "Well, I review CISA release as soon as they come out." It's like, well, here's the challenge, right? Because you're a human. You may have been,
Yeah,
on vacation
missed it.
when that occurred, or
Yeah,
you may, who knows, right? So this is one of those things where you can kind of leverage AI, to kind of search and assess threat intel feeds for you and determine which ones apply, to your industry and to your company specifically, so that
Yeah.
they pop out to what's important. Because this day and age, there's so much threat data that's coming in. I think it's almost impossible for a human to do that without some type of high-end tool.
Agreed.
It's a perfect example of like, okay, how do I stay up on emerging threats? This is a tool that can help me, analyze data faster and make me more efficient to do that. And um, and I think it's also important to kind of establish that governance across what's used throughout all the organizational departments of the company too, right? Because everybody's kind of experimenting with this in some way, shape, or form, and sometimes they don't necessarily think about the aggregate issue that may happen from what they're doing. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have, marketing's trying to get insights, and some of those insights are in sales, and they also may be part of procurement, right? And so, they create, an AI model and, put a wrapper of an agent around it that's going to collect data from all these different parts. Well, when you do that, you just created a new data set, right? And that new data set now may have some, compliance issues. So if you took, a customer name and a customer address, and then you put a piece like a product, that customer bought together into this one database, now you just got, something that could be considered PPI, right? And I've seen that happen in the telecom space where,
Yeah.
maybe numbers that are tied to phones, and then that unto itself is not PII. But as soon as you tie an address, and a customer name to it, it is absolutely PII, and it goes under a completely different governance model. And so I think it's important that first. Security is at the forefront of the development life cycle of all this. And that's, unfortunately, I'm seeing more and more scenarios where security is still the afterthought because people are moving so fast that they just want to get something out, right?
Product out. Yep.
And I get it because, there's been a ton of spin in the space, and you've got the C-suite and the board saying, okay, where's my results? And, the faster you move, the faster risk that you also provide back to the company. And it's one of the things where I think CISOs have got to be a little bit more forceful about, I need to know what you're doing, where you're at, and then I will take the responsibility and make sure that I have people assigned to help you to make sure we put the right kind of guardrails in so we don't have those kind of consequences occur. It's a difficult thing because you want to move fast and you want to enable the company, but at the same time, you're going to have to slow them down in order to get good results. Ultimately, that's what everybody wants.
That's fair. And good, thoughtful answer. And thank you for that. And so with that, we'll wrap up the podcast. And thank you for making time to visit today.
Thank you, Joe. Anytime you need me, just let me know.
Nice. Okay. Bye, guys.